Rain fell in cold sheets across the alley behind the crumbling warehouse, each drop slicing through the silence like accusation. Detective Jack Sullivan dropped to his knees, the chill of the pavement forgotten beneath the weight in his chest. Before him, a gaunt figure cowered bones, sharp beneath tattered fur muzzle, wrapped cruelly in blood-crusted wire. It was Max, his partner, his friend. Sullivan's hand trembled as he reached out palm-open fingers, slightly curled like he used to when Max needed reassurance. "Easy, boy," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "It's me." Max growled low, a sound twisted by pain and fear, backing against the wall with haunted eyes that once held fire and focus. Now they were dull, flickering with confusion and betrayal. The same eyes that had stared down criminals, sniffed out buried evidence, and saved Sullivan's life more than once. 7 years of trust, unraveled by 2 months of silence. Behind him, a shadow stepped closer. Blake Morrison, a man Max had once helped lock away, stood awkwardly in the downpour, guilt tugging at the corners of his face. "I didn't know who else to call," he murmured, soaked and unshaven. "Found him behind the warehouse. Looked like he'd been dumped." Sullivan barely registered the words. His gaze stayed fixed on the wire biting into Max's muzzle, where the skin had split and festered. With every breath, the German shepherd's chest rose in shallow, jagged movements. When Max tried to bolt, his legs buckled. The pavement caught him with a sickening thud. Kneeling beside the fallen dog, Sullivan choked back the storm rising inside. He carefully draped his jacket over Max's shivering body. "We're going to fix this," he whispered, not a promise, but a vow. Blake shifted beside him, watching. "He didn't recognize you. People who do this, they break something deep." Sullivan lifted Max, gently, shocked by how light he'd become. The once proud warrior was now all ribs and wounds and fear. As he laid Max in the back seat of his car, the German shepherd whimpered faintly, a sound that clawed at Sullivan's soul. "I'm taking him to Dr. Rodriguez," he said, then quieter. "And I'm going to find out who did this." The veterinary clinic was bathed in harsh fluorescent light, the kind that made pain look worse. Dr. Emily Rodriguez didn't flinch when Sullivan burst through the doors with Max in his arms. She cleared the examination table with practiced precision, her voice crisp despite the tremor in her eyes. "Put him here." Max barely stirred as they laid him down. His labored breathing filled the room like a ticking clock. Sullivan stepped back, his hands stained with mudblood and guilt. "I don't know what happened," he said, voice cracking. "But I intend to." Emily didn't answer. She was already cutting the wire, slowly, carefully, her jaw clenched. "This was deliberate," she muttered. "The wire's been on for days, maybe longer. It's cut nearly to the bone." As sedatives took hold, Max's trembling stopped. Tubes ran from his legs, delivering fluids and antibiotics. Rodriguez worked in silence, a battlefield medic in sterile blue scrubs. Sullivan stood useless by the wall, his eyes fixed on the rise and fall of Max's chest. "This wasn't just neglect," Emily said at last. "This was torture. Systematic. Over weeks." Sullivan's fists clenched at his sides. "Will he make it?" Emily looked up, meeting his gaze. "I don't know. But if he does, he won't be the same dog you knew." Silence swelled between them like fog. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. Neither had Sullivan's mind. "It changes them," she added softly. "It changes all of us." Sullivan nodded. His face, so often carved in stone, broke under the weight of helplessness. "But we survive." He looked down at Max again, the German shepherd wrapped in blankets, machines whispering beside him. This wasn't just a dog. This was a soldier, a brother in arms. And someone had tried to erase him, erase everything he'd stood for. Sullivan stepped outside, the air sharp in his lungs. He called Chief Thompson each ring of the phone, stoking the fire in his chest. "This isn't just cruelty," he said when the line picked up. "This is attempted murder of a police officer." Oakage, Montana, a quiet town, nestled in pine and pride. The kind of place where porch lights glowed like beacons, and everyone knew the police chief by name. For 23 years, Jack Sullivan had served here his life, defined by missing persons, midnight phone calls, and the weight of a badge that rarely came off. Max had entered that world as a lanky 1-year-old, with ears too big for his skull, and energy that couldn't be contained. Sullivan hadn't wanted a partner, certainly not a dog. Gimmicks, he'd grumbled at the time. But Chief Thompson insisted, and after just one case together, Sullivan never walked another beat alone. Max wasn't just smart, he was intuitive. In their 7 years together, he'd found 17 missing persons, uncovered drugs worth millions, and once saved Sullivan's life, lunging at an armed suspect, a heartbeat before the trigger was pulled. The scar along Max's flank was a permanent reminder. The two of them had become Oakage legends. By the time Max reached retirement, the entire town showed up to honor him. The ceremony was held in the community center, strung with blue and gold streamers. A banner read, "Thank you for your service," and a specially crafted badge gleamed under the lights. Max sat at attention beside Sullivan as Chief Thompson recited his achievements: over 300 operations, 57 convictions, 3 officers saved. When Sullivan took the microphone, words failed him. After a pause, he managed, "This dog has more heart and courage than most people I've known. It's been an honor." Then he stepped back before anyone could see his eyes. But the moment that cut deepest came after the applause. Sullivan couldn't take Max home. His daughter Abigail's allergies were too severe. They'd tried everything, nothing worked. So when the Reeves family volunteered, smiling with civic pride, Sullivan handed over the leash with a knot in his stomach he couldn't explain. James Reeves, local construction mogul. Caroline, a schoolteacher. Nathan, a quiet teenager who had once written an award-winning essay on police dogs. On paper, they were perfect. "Don't let him get bored," Sullivan had said, his voice turning clinical to mask the ache. "He needs purpose. He'll be living the dream," James had assured him. 5 acres of land, treats, toys. But when Max looked back one last time, his ears flicked and his gaze lingered. It felt like a goodbye too final. Sullivan tried to believe he'd done the right thing. That first week, he drove by the Reeves property twice. Max was there, trotting after Nathan with measured steps, taking treats from Caroline's outstretched hand. He didn't look thrilled, but he didn't look afraid either. Sullivan told himself that was enough. But on his 3rd visit, Max sprinted to the gate with unusual urgency, and that's when Sullivan saw it. A fresh scar above the dog's right eye. Thin, precise, out of place, James Reeves explained casually. Caught himself on some fencing. No big deal. Doc Rodriguez checked him out. It didn't sit right. Later that day, Sullivan visited Emily at the clinic. She looked up from her charts, frowning. They haven't brought Max in at all. That night, Sullivan lay in bed, eyes locked on the ceiling. Something gnawed at him. Not facts. Instinct. The same feeling he'd trusted in the field for decades now whispered something's wrong. 3 days later, Max was gone. James called it in. Said the gate had been left open. Maybe Max wandered off. Sounded concerned. Apologetic. But his voice was tight, too tight. Sullivan didn't wait for orders. He joined the search personally, heart hammering with guilt. Flashlights swept the woods. Flyers went up. Radio stations ran hourly bulletins. Volunteers shouted Max's name into trees and culverts and cul-de-sacs. But the Reeves' story began to splinter. "You said the gate was open when you got home from work." Sullivan pressed James on day 3. Nathan told Officer Daniels it was open after school 3 hours earlier. Caroline stepped in smoothly. Stress, confusion. These days have blurred together. Sullivan didn't argue. He just nodded and left. That night, parked a half-mile from the Reeves property, he waited. Just after midnight, a pickup truck pulled into their driveway. A man emerged, entered without knocking, and left, carrying what looked like a heavy duffel bag. Sullivan snapped photos. When he checked the plate, his heart stopped. The truck belonged to Tyler Reeves James's brother, a convicted drug trafficker, sentenced to 15 years, supposed to still be in prison. And 3 years ago, Max had helped put him there. The morning after Sullivan stared at his phone, thumb hovering over Chief Thompson's contact. But before he could press call, it rang. Unknown number. Detective Sullivan, a man's voice asked. "I think I found your dog, Blake Morrison." The last man Max had tracked through dense forest over ravines until the suspect collapsed in surrender. Sullivan hadn't seen him since sentencing. "I was taking a shortcut behind Rusty's bar," Morrison explained, "and I heard whimpering." Now they stood in the alley together. Max lay crumpled near a dumpster wire embedded in his muzzle ribs protruding beneath matted fur. Morrison kept his distance. Didn't know who else to call. Sullivan couldn't speak. He moved with practiced control, wrapping Max in his jacket, whispering reassurances the dog couldn't hear. Every ounce of his former partner's weight felt like penance. On the drive to Dr. Rodriguez's clinic, Max whimpered once. It was soft, faint, and it gutted Sullivan like a blade. Inside the exam room, Emily's eyes widened. "Oh my God." She cleared the table. "Put him here." The examination was grim. Wire had cut to bone. Ribs were cracked. One leg was fractured, healing wrong. Max had lost nearly half his body weight. He was dehydrated, infected, broken in ways even medicine struggled to name. "This wasn't an accident," Emily said, voice flat with restrained rage. "This was weeks of abuse." Sullivan stepped outside to breathe. He didn't notice the cold anymore. Inside, Emily worked in silence, snipping away the wire. Sullivan returned and stood behind her. "Will he live?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted. "Even if he does, he won't be the same." Sullivan looked at Max, unmoving, silent, his ears twitching beneath sedation. This wasn't just a betrayal of a dog. It was betrayal of loyalty, of service, of everything Max had given this town. "He's not just a dog," Sullivan whispered. "He's a cop." Emily met his eyes. Then what happened here wasn't cruelty. It was a crime. And Sullivan made another vow he would find whoever did this. And they would answer for every inch of wire. Word spread like fire in dry grass. By sunrise, the clinic was surrounded neighbors, with coffee and casseroles, former officers offering help, children clutching drawings of Max in his vest. Oakage rallied behind their wounded hero. Sullivan hadn't left the waiting room bench. Officer Danielle Parker approached quietly. "Chief wants to talk. Says it's urgent." Sullivan took the call outside. Thompson's voice was strained. "Reeves filed a complaint. Says you've been harassing his family." Sullivan laughed bitterly. "Max ends up tortured and I'm the problem. They're claiming someone with a grudge took him. Maybe someone targeting the department. Tyler Reeves is supposed to be in prison." Sullivan snapped. "I saw him at their house." A pause. Then Thompson's voice lowered. "Paroled. 3 months ago. Good behavior." Rage flashed white-hot in Sullivan's chest. He'd trusted the system. Let Max go. And now, later that day, Blake Morrison showed up again, shifting awkwardly outside the clinic. "How's he doing?" Sullivan studied him. "Why do you care?" Morrison hesitated. "That dog didn't care who I was. He just did his job. Found me when no one else could. Figured I owed him." He glanced around before adding, "I've heard talk." Tyler's running drugs again, using James's company as cover. People in the department might be on the payroll. Sullivan's breath hitched. If true, it explained a lot. Tyler's early parole, the dropped charges against Caroline's brother, the strange donation records. A sudden commotion inside shattered the moment. Emily's voice cut through the hallway seizure. Sullivan ran. Max was rigid, trembling violently, machines beeping in alarm. Emily worked fast, issuing orders with calm authority. From the head trauma or antibiotic reaction, she said tersely. We need space, Jack. Sullivan backed away, helpless again. The next hour crawled by. When Emily finally emerged, she looked spent. He's stable, but not safe. The seizure stressed a system already near collapse. Sullivan sat down heavily, his hands slack on his knees. I should have followed my gut. You couldn't have known, Emily said gently. I should have known, he muttered. It was my job to protect him. Just then, a message lit up his phone. Storage Unit 47. Oak Ridge Self-Storage. Key under the blue rock by the gate. Evidence you want is inside. Destroy this message. Sullivan stared at the screen. Then he stood up. The storage unit sat at the edge of town, its corrugated steel walls humming under the mid-morning sun. Sullivan, crouched by the gate, retrieved the key from beneath the blue rock and made his way to Unit 47. Inside, a single filing cabinet and a laptop tethered to a digital recorder. Gloved and careful, Sullivan opened the drawers. Invoices for building materials excessively priced, inflated for jobs that never happened. Tucked into the back was a notebook, handwritten names, dates, figures, payoffs, laundering. Then the footage. Sullivan clicked into the video files. Time-stamped 2 weeks ago. Tyler and James Reeves arguing in the living room. Tyler's hands flew. James turned away. Tyler struck him from behind. Next clip. Tyler dragging Max by a choke chain into the garage. Max resisted, snarling weakly. Tyler pulled a stun gun. Max collapsed. Sullivan flinched as the wire was wrapped around the muzzle on screen. Methodical. Without mercy. Sullivan turned away, bile rising in his throat. Then one last folder, PD payments. Checks made out to various names, including M. Thompson. Dates aligned with departmental drug enforcement decisions. Sullivan's jaw locked. If this was real, it implicated more than the Reeves family. It might go all the way to the top. Gravel crunched outside. Sullivan shut the unit and slipped the evidence into his coat. Through the door's gap, he spotted Officer Daniels approaching. Chief's been trying to reach you, Daniels called. Says it's urgent. Sullivan emerged calm, just following a lead. Daniels hesitated. Chief wants you at the station now. Orders are to bring you directly. Sullivan locked the unit, palming the key into the weeds. All right, he said. Let's go. In the patrol car, Sullivan stared out the window. If Thompson was involved, going in blind might be a mistake. But if he ran, he'd lose any chance at justice for Max, for the truth. The station came into view, flanked by unmarked black SUVs with government plates. Inside, the tension was electric. Plainclothes agents lingered. Chief Thompson stood outside the conference room, face drawn tight. Jack, he said, opening the door. We need to talk. Inside the conference room, a woman in a tailored suit stood to greet him. Detective Sullivan, she said, extending a hand. I'm Special Agent Miranda Wells, FBI. Sullivan's pulse quickened. We've been investigating the Reeves family for over 18 months. Wells continued. Money laundering, drug trafficking, and possible departmental corruption. Sullivan glanced at Chief Thompson, whose face revealed nothing. My former K-9 partner was placed with them after retirement, Sullivan said carefully. He was found tortured. We know, Wells replied. His condition accelerated our timeline. She spread photographs across the table. James and Tyler Reeves' construction site, associate suppliers. In the center of it all, a name Sullivan didn't know. Victor Castillo, a cartel boss spanning Mexico to Canada. The Reeves family has been laundering money for Castillo's organization for years, Wells explained. James's business made the perfect front: phony purchases, fake contractors, large cash movements. Sullivan pulled out the notebook and checks he'd found. This includes payments to someone named M. Thompson. The air chilled. Chief Thompson's jaw tensed. That's my brother. He consults in construction. But I never... He trailed off, the truth settling in. We'll verify everything Wells said, bagging the evidence. But this changes our strategy. Tyler Reeves didn't just abuse a retired dog, he sent a message. Sullivan's voice was flat steel. He tortured a police officer. And now, said District Attorney Eleanor Hayes, stepping in the public, is demanding accountability. We're proposing a hearing officially to review K-9 retirement protocols. Unofficially, it lets us investigate without tipping our hand. Use Max as a distraction, Sullivan asked, incredulous. A symbol, Wells corrected. We'll protect him. But public focus buys us time to dismantle Castillo's network. And Tyler, we'll get him, Hayes promised. But if we move too soon, we lose the bigger picture. Sullivan paced, jaw tight. So I play the grieving handler. Call for reform while we build a case behind the scenes. You're the perfect voice, Wells said. Everyone trusts you, and they care about Max. Sullivan nodded once. Then we do this right. But first, I need to check on him. Outside the clinic, news vans lined the street like vultures. Camera crews jostled for space while neighbors lit candles near handmade signs, "Stay strong, Max." Hero, fighter, family. Sullivan pushed through the crowd and found Emily Rodriguez in her office, hunched over charts. She looked up, eyes tired. He's awake, she said softly. Weak, but no seizures since last night. Sullivan exhaled, something loosening in his chest. In the recovery room, Max lay on a padded bed, a tangle of tubes and monitors around him. His eyes tracked Sullivan's approach. The tail thumped once, slow, intentional. Sullivan knelt beside him. You're a damn miracle, partner. He stroked Max's head gently, careful of the bandages. Public hearings tomorrow, he said aloud, though he wasn't sure if Max understood. They want to use your story. Turn pain into spotlight. Emily entered quietly. They're using him again. Sullivan shook his head. It's bigger. Cartels, corruption. This goes beyond Oakage. Emily crossed her arms. Max was placed with the Reeves by the department, wasn't he? Sullivan paused. Yeah. Then who approved that? The silence was heavy. Chief Thompson, he muttered. Or someone close. He thought back to the payment records. Monsieur Thompson, his brother, connected to Reeves Construction. The placement wasn't a coincidence, it was calculated. Max wasn't just placed, Emily whispered. He was positioned, like bait, or worse, like a surveillance risk. Sullivan nodded grimly. They thought he was part of an investigation. That's why they snapped, why they tortured him, trying to find out what we knew. Emily's voice trembled. He trusted people, and they broke him. A knock at the door. Blake Morrison again, awkward, hesitant. Sorry, he said, holding a small paper bag. Brought some high-protein treats. My sister works in a vet clinic in Bozeman. Said they might help. Sullivan took them, caught off guard by the gesture. Thanks. Morrison lingered. Town's talking about the hearing. People are angry. They want answers. They'll get them, Sullivan promised. Justice doesn't move fast, but it moves. As Morrison left, Sullivan turned to Emily. He's part of this somehow, but I don't know which way. She glanced toward Max. Let's just make sure he lives long enough to see the truth come out. The Oakage Community Center overflowed. Inside, every seat was taken. Outside, speakers blared to a restless crowd hungry for answers. Satellite trucks lined the block like war machines. Max's story had gone national. Sullivan sat beside D.A. Hayes and Chief Thompson at a long table facing the crowd. His dress uniform felt tight, unfamiliar. He'd spent the morning at the clinic. Max had lapped water on his own. A small win. But Sullivan couldn't shake the image of him, barely breathing, wires biting into his muzzle. "We're ready to begin," Hayes said, tapping the mic. The room fell silent. "This hearing is to examine the failure of our K-9 retirement protocols," she began. "To understand how a decorated officer like Max was allowed to fall through the cracks. No mention of cartels, no mention of crimes. Not yet." Sullivan stepped forward when called. The cameras found him instantly. "Max served 7 years with honor," he began. "He found missing children, caught armed suspects, saved lives, including mine." He gestured toward the projection screen. Images appeared. Max's wounded face, the wire cuts, the emaciated frame. The room gasped. "And this," Sullivan said, "was how we thanked him." He didn't cry. Didn't need to. The photos spoke louder than tears. "We failed him," he continued. "We placed him in a home we didn't vet properly. We ignored signs of abuse. We let bureaucracy bury responsibility." Thompson followed, expression somber. "As chief of police, I take full responsibility. The program will be overhauled, effective immediately." From the edge of the room, Sullivan spotted Agent Wells, plain-clothed, watchful. Other agents flanked the walls, eyes trained on James and Caroline Reeves, seated midway back, expressions carefully composed. Tyler Reeves was conspicuously absent. The hearing pressed on with testimony from K-9 trainers and emotional public comments. Children from the elementary school delivered crayon drawings of Max. A local vet offered to start a care fund for retired dogs. Oakage had never been louder or more united. Finally, James Reeves approached the mic. "We're devastated," he said smoothly. "Max was part of our family. We searched for him, prayed for him. Whoever did this must be brought to justice." Sullivan said nothing, but his jaw clenched so tightly it trembled. His phone buzzed. "Emily Rodriguez, come to the clinic. Emergency with Max." Sullivan didn't wait for protocol. He slipped out a side door, dodged reporters, and sped through town, dread thick in his throat. The hearing had been theater important, yes, but it had kept him away from where he was needed most. At the clinic, Emily met him at the entrance, face pale. "It's his heart," she said. "The trauma. It's catching up. He collapsed 20 minutes ago." Inside the treatment room, Max lay surrounded by machines. His chest rose and fell in shallow jerks, wires clinging to him like ghosts. Emily worked in silence, adjusting IVs, whispering to the nurse. Sullivan moved to his side, resting a hand gently on Max's flank. "You don't get to leave now," he murmured. "Not after everything." Emily looked over, her voice soft. "The damage is real, Jack, but he's fighting." For a long time, Sullivan stayed by the table. He remembered Max as a pup ears, too big spirit, too wild loyalty, too immediate. That dog had never once hesitated, even in the face of gunfire. And now, after everything, he still hadn't given up. When the machines steadied, when Max's breathing found a rhythm again, Emily finally exhaled. "He's stabilized. For now." Later, as they sat in the quiet, Sullivan's voice cracked with realization. It wasn't coincidence. Max was placed with the Reeves on purpose. Emily turned sharply. "What do you mean?" The department approved the adoption. Thompson's brother, M. Thompson, was on the cartel's payroll. If Max was placed with a family connected to a laundering operation, maybe they thought he was part of a surveillance setup, or a liability. Emily's face darkened. "So they tortured him to find out what he knew." Sullivan nodded. "They weren't thinking like humans. They were thinking like criminals. And Max was everything they feared. Loyalty, law, memory." At that moment, Blake Morrison appeared again. Quiet, unassuming, holding a small paper bag. "Protein treats," he said. "Thought they might help." Sullivan took them, unsure whether to trust or thank the man. "He's strong," he said, "but we don't know how much more he can take." Emily looked at Max, her voice trembling. "The physical wounds will heal, but the betrayal, that leaves scars we'll never see." Sullivan reached down again. Max opened his eyes. No growl, no flinch, just trust. By the next day, Oakage was a town transformed. Volunteers filled shifts at the clinic door. National media camped outside, like it was a war zone. For once, the noise was in service of something true. In the conference room at the station, Agent Wells D.A. Hayes and Chief Thompson mapped out final moves. Arrests would come soon, quiet, coordinated, surgical. The cartel's reach had frayed, and Max's story had struck a chord far beyond the county line. But none of that mattered to Sullivan until he returned to the clinic and saw Max, alert, bandaged, scarred, but alive. Emily looked up as he entered. No seizures, vitals stable, and she gestured toward a nearby bowl he ate this morning. Sullivan crossed the room slowly. Max's eyes tracked him. The tail moved again, twice this time. "You stubborn bastard," Sullivan said, kneeling. Still fighting. He let Max sniff his hand, then rested it gently on the dog's head. "They're not parading you out for the press," he added. "You stay here, heal. Let the world talk. Let them rage." Emily nodded. "He needs quiet. He needs time." Sullivan stayed a while, then stepped outside for air. Morrison was there, waiting by the sidewalk, gaze distant. "They'll get what's coming," Sullivan said. Morrison gave a slight nod. "Good. He didn't deserve any of this." "He's the reason they'll fall," Sullivan said. "And when they do, it'll be his name that makes them flinch." Back inside, Emily stood at Max's side. She spoke softly, not to Sullivan, but to the dog. "You're more than what they did to you. More than a badge. You're family." That night, as Sullivan sat by Max's side, he whispered, "We made it through hell. Together. And whatever comes next." He paused, hand resting gently over Max's chest, rising and falling beneath bandages and scars. "We face it side by side." Outside, the town prepared for justice. Inside, the German shepherd closed his eyes, no longer flinching from the hand that reached for him. He was home.